Well, first of all, hi, and thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. How are you doing? How have you been?
My pleasure. I'm good. I mean, as good as anybody can be during these crazy times. I guess we're all a little bit mm, desperate at some point, because this situation has been dragging on for so long that we don't really know how this is going to affect everybody and how much longer this is going to go on or how much longer can it go on. I mean, personally, we're all doing fine. Everybody in the band is good, but it's a crazy thing. We have an album coming out and no tour and we don't really know when touring is going to resume. So feels really strange. Never had this before, obviously.
Yeah, and you have quite had a long career, so I guess this is the first time that you've been quite like without any shows so long.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing that I mean, this almost feels like a bad movie somehow, doesn't it? I mean, it almost feels like a bad Bruce Willis movie where you think like, this would never happen in real life. The whole world is shutting down and no more concerts and this and that and a worldwide pandemic and everybody's running around with face masks. You think like, yeah, sure, but here we are. It's happening. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I guess there's nothing much to do about it anyway, so we just have to, you know,
No.
see
And we
where it
figured,
goes.
we were debating in the band and with management and everybody whether we should hold the album back and reserve it until the time comes when we can tour again. But in the end, we decided against it because it's been a few years since we had an album out, and at least this way the fans can enjoy the album and listen to it at home in a quarantine and headbang
Yeah.
alone or something until we get ready to tour again, and then we'll do it then. But it's going to happen one day. It's just I don't know when.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's important for new music to be released because if all the bands would be waiting for, a possibility to
Exactly.
tour, there would be no music. So it's really great
Exactly.
you guys are releasing your new album in general.
Well, yeah, and I think the fans will enjoy it. Nevertheless, you don't really need to have a tour in order to enjoy an album, I think. But of course, it usually makes more sense from a marketing perspective and all that. But here we are. The album's coming out, and you know, so anyhow, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I first want to start off with talking about the cover art. The
hmm
snake, it's pretty impressive. What can you tell me about the cover art? Is there some kind of thing the snake represents?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of evilness, I guess. I mean, we were thinking about, we have the title "Too Mean to Die," and obviously we were thinking, how can we visually represent that? And at the same time, we were going for something that's very iconic and simple because in the past we've had album covers that had that simplistic, iconic in a way, something that you can remember quite easily. We had the metal heart and the fists and the bloody hand with blood of the nations, or in Blind Rage we had this bull on the cover, and these kind of images seem to work quite well for us. And so when the snake idea came up, we thought that's pretty cool. We just need to make sure it's not a real snake. We'll turn it into this sort of metal thing, metal serpent monster, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because your previous album, it had this dystopian,
Sure.
post-apocalyptic cover, and now we're kind of living in this world. Have you kind of reflected on your previous album that it's kind of relevant for this time around?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we didn't name the album anything Corona specific, because the last album was already called Rise of Chaos. And if anything, that would have been so good now, because it's definitely more chaotic than we had ever previously anticipated. And we also already had a song called Pandemic, funny enough, about 10 years ago, a worldwide pandemic. That was the theme of the song. So we figured, we've said everything we can say lyrically, and so let's just do something that's more of a lighthearted kind of statement in a way, because it's obviously not meant to be serious, but because hey, nobody's immortal, but we can pretend, right?
Yeah. Um, so in general, how would you say To Mean to Die differs from The Rise of Chaos musically?
I mean, it wasn't supposed to differ. We never try to make we never set out to make a specific album that has a theme or a motto or anything like that. We always just write a bunch of songs and until we're happy and we feel like we have something together that makes a good album, basically, you know. And usually the song dictates whether it goes on the album and what the theme. We never really have a master plan for any of these things. So, and in this case, you know, we didn't really write anything specifically for this album or for these times or whatever. We just write a bunch of riffs and songs until we're happy. And we have, you know, when I usually meet with Andy Sneap early on in the process, and we go through all my song ideas, and those are sometimes just musical stuff, some riffs, some snippets, sometimes complete songs, sometimes just hook lines or titles, all kinds of fragments that we feel are worth looking at. And then we picked out the first few songs in last March and worked on those for a while, and then we had to take a break and then recorded the rest of the stuff later in the summer. But it's always based on the strongest songs, you know, and whatever the strongest song is wins.
Do you feel like because the pandemic happened in between the first couple of songs you finished and the rest, do you feel like you were able to revise a couple of things maybe with the rest of the songs during the process?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to, I mean, not specifically because of the Corona thing or anything over the lockdown or anything, but in general, I like the idea of not having to do everything in one go, because sometimes, I mean, we've done that in the past where we had like, I don't know, a few weeks time and we said to ourselves, we can do this. We write all the songs and we record them all and we mix them all in one go. But I tell you, you're so close to it and you're almost tired of listening to them. You can't even be objective. And then a few weeks later, after you have not heard them for a while, you listen to them again and you go like, totally obvious. We need this or that. We should fix this, or this could be better, or I don't know. It's always good to step away from it. You get a little bit of objectivity, and that's was kind of a luxury that we used this time. You know, we let the songs simmer for a while, and then concentrated on the other ones, and that was quite good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing that over the years, the 16 albums, the whole process has changed maybe with every album. Have your methods of songwriting and recording and that, has that changed a lot? And what kind of approach do you prefer nowadays?
I mean, it really has never changed dramatically. Even when I think back of the early days when we used, of course, different technology. We used to record to reel tapes and then to 4-track cassette machines, and we had different tools, but really the process has always been very similar, even back then. Especially since we all have sort of home recording setups that enable everybody to sit at home and write a song. In the early days, we didn't have that. We almost had to go to the rehearsal room and we had to have the drummer there and the bass player. Everybody had to play together in order to even make a demo, where nowadays you can just sit in your bedroom and you have drum machine, you've got all the technologies and you can do it that way. And that's what we've been doing at least these last 5 albums, where we each wrote a bunch of songs and demos and played them to the other guys and that way. So that's really a luxury. But other than that, the basic problems or the basic idea of songwritings, it's still very much the same as it was back then. You know, you're always looking for that hook. You're always looking for a cool melody and sometimes a good lyrical content idea. So it's not getting easier with time. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
All the technology in the world doesn't help you. I mean, if you have a great idea, if you got a good idea, technology or not, and the other way around, you know.
You're also one of these bands that is like a live band, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you, when you start writing songs or riffs, do you have that in the back of your mind all the time, how it's going to sound live?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can sort of picture in your mind, if you've got a good idea, you feel it bouncing. You can almost see the crowd getting into it, and you know, there are certain tempos or certain grooves that really where you think like, "Ooh, I'm sure they're going to get into that really well live." You know, absolutely. You have that in the back. Ideally, I mean, I even remember the days when you could try out songs before they were recorded. You know, those days are long gone in the days of YouTube and everything. But like say, especially bands used to do that all the time, especially in the 70s and whatnot. They used to play songs live because why not? They could
Yeah.
try them out and then record them, you know. Obviously, you can't do that nowadays because everything is immediately out there online. So,
Yeah, the reason why I'm also asking is because you also have three guitarists now. I was wondering if I don't want to ask you about the studio because guess that's a different thing where you can always use more guitars. But live, do you feel like with the ability of having three guitarists live, that it gave you the freedom to kind of experiment more with the guitars on this album?
yeah, like you said, I mean, on albums, and that just goes back all these years. We've always had, you know, multiple guitars, way more on the album that you can ever represent live. And live, usually, you know, you got two parts you have to pick. You know, usually rhythm guitars, and then all the overdubs sort of get left away. But now that we have three guitar players, we actually do have the luxury of picking a few parts that are normally, you know, left away. So that's really something that I look forward to, especially with some of the older songs. And some songs you could never really fully represent, and you felt like, there's something missing when you play it live. So there might even be a chance of playing some songs we had never played before, just because we now have an extra player on stage. But even for the new stuff, we made sure that we've got enough room for Phil on there, because there's a lot of stuff on this album where Phil and I dual back and forth, and we do twin harmonies, and now we can even do that live and still have a rhythm guitar underneath it. So I think it's going to be quite cool.
Yeah, looking forward to see it once that, shows are allowed again.
Exactly. We've already done some shows in South America that way, and seems like an ancient history, but it was in the end of 2019. Yeah, we did some shows with that lineup, and it was brilliant. It was really good.
Obviously, the title "To Mean to Die" is named after one of the songs. And you mentioned that you didn't want to have a title that reflected the pandemic. Is that the main reason you chose this track to be a title track, or is there another reason too?
Actually, it was backwards. I thought of the title because I don't know why, but I thought that would be a cool saying and it would make a cool title. And then I wrote the song for it. It's backwards,
Okay.
because at that time we had maybe, I don't know, 80% of the songs done, and none of them really wanted to sound it like an album title or a tour title. I don't know. Undertaker, it's okay. It's a great song, but it's not I don't know, the Undertaker album, I don't know, or the Undertaker tour doesn't really sound proper to me. It doesn't sound metal enough. And I thought of this thing that would, it's actually based on a German saying. It's very similar meaning, but completely different words. And "To Mean to Die" was the English version of it. And I thought, wow, that sounds cool. That reflects the times we live in and says it all. But it's really a fun statement more than anything.
Yeah. So coming up with the title, did you already have the riffs and the instrumental song ready, or did it
No,
completely inspire the song?
it's inspired the song. But that's always I mean, you always need a starting point. And if you've got a title that you want to use, then you just write the riff around it, or you write I don't know, you write everything, you base everything around it.
Mhm.
It's always easier to have something to work with than it is, I mean, at least for me, than when you have a blank slate and anything goes and you have no idea, it could go this way, that way, anyway. It's always easy to have something to work with, to me.
In another interview, I heard that you did part of the songs digitally with the producer. Now, I'm not gonna ask you about the process behind that, but I'm just wondering, are there also any advantages you discovered through doing this whole production process digitally?
Not really. I mean, the only advantage is you don't have to fly if you don't need. I mean, it's like we are talking right now. I
Yeah.
mean, I prefer to come to Finland and do a proper interview in somewhere with a nice coffee, or I don't know, nice environment, and do it in person. But you know, if you can't do that, then this works perfectly okay. But it's not ideal, obviously. You know.
Yeah. Do you see like this becoming a thing like in the future, even without Corona?
I'm afraid so. It's going to get more and more. It's like working from home, it's the same thing. People are discovering all of a sudden how much it is possible. I mean, some people are really not going to go there, but a lot of them are. I think a lot of companies, a lot of people are discovering that things are possible that you didn't really feel the need to do before, because everybody was so used to, you go there, you fly there, you do what you have to do. And, now that it's not possible, we're all finding out that, yeah, it may be not even necessary to do half these things. I think for us, we're still going to prefer and going to have the luxury of actually flying all together. I mean, flying everybody in and working together the good old fashioned way, because I think it's going to make for a better product and a better environment. The other thing with working something like we've done is the time difference. If some guy, we're in the United States and Andy was in England, I mean, there's a 6 or 7 hour time difference. So if we were working in the afternoon, like you want to in the studio, and it was already 3 a.m. for Andy sometimes by the time we got finished, and that's a bit of a pain. So that, certain things don't really work.
Yeah, I can see that. So one of the things that I really liked about this album is that it was like there was a certain variety in the songs. So I just want to discuss briefly some different songs that stood out to me in a different way.
Yeah,
So what can you tell me, for instance, about the song The Undertaker?
that was one of the first songs that was finished, and only or mainly because Mark had written those lyrics first. That's lyrics are usually written last, but in this case, he gave me a set of lyrics without any music, any hint what it could be about. But the lyrics inspired me to write the music, and it almost came together quite nicely right away. There wasn't a bunch of revisions. Some of these songs, like the song Zombie Apocalypse, went through, I guess, 15 revisions until it felt like it was proper and it all came together and everybody was happy. But some other songs there come together quite nicely, like The Undertaker.
Is it for you more difficult when you get finished lyrics to then, base your music on that? Do you like the process the other way around better?
Yeah, I'm always happy for any inspiration. Like I said earlier, if I have a title or complete lyrics or something, it gives me something to work with, because when you can, it's almost like a starting point or a marching order, if you want. If you imagine you had to, I don't know, paint a painting, and it's a white canvas, and somebody says, just make a painting, anything. And you sit there, what am I going to do? Where am I going to start? Where do I want to end? I don't know. You can do anything. But when somebody tells, make me a painting of a tree or something, at least okay, you have something to,
Yeah.
you've got a theme to work with, and you know what, at least, where it's going to go. So that always helps. I like it when there's lyrics, or at least, titles or something. It
Yeah.
always inspires me.
You also mentioned Zombie Apocalypse, that there were a lot of revisions there. I was
Yeah.
wondering, did you know from the start that that was going to be the opening song?
No, that always sort of happens along the way somehow, because you go through your songs that you have, and again, I saw this as a good opener because I thought this as a show. I envisioned this, with the intro and everything. This might be a good first song to come on stage and get everybody going. And the same way on a record, you've got a little bit of a Godzilla like intro there, but not too long, and then it kicks into this heavy ass riff, and you jump into it full force. So it seemed like a good opening track. Just, I don't
Yeah.
know, use your gut feeling, but
Yeah.
didn't write it as that. No, it just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like you guys at least put a lot of thought in the order of the album and the flow. Also, the last song, the instrumental, was also a great and refreshing way, kind of, to end an album, basically.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's also, these things almost are coincidences sometimes, because I mean that song wasn't even specifically written for Accept. It was just a musical idea that I had, and it could have very well ended up on one of my solo albums, because this is what I do on my solo project albums where I take classical music and I make rock metal instrumentals versions of them. And that's one of those examples because it's also based on classical music. And but I played it to Andy and the guys, and Andy said, "Well, it's so metal and it's not really a typical classical. It's so heavy that it sounds like it could very well be on this album, and it gives it a nice little color. And especially now that it's at the very end of the album, it to me it feels like a closing track or something, like a the movie is over and the credits are rolling down or something. I don't know, that sort of vibe."
Do you think that that might be a song that you'll ever play live, or is that kind of the outro tune on tape?
Good idea. I haven't thought that far yet, whether we could play it live. I mean, quite honestly, I don't know that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't come. Well, it's not one of the first songs that come to mind because we always have to pick. Obviously, now if and when we go on tour, then we usually play, I don't know, 3 to 5 songs tops from a new album, and then usually, they filter it down to maybe 3 in the end after a while. So there's some other contenders that I would probably look at first, but it's definitely a playable, great song. I don't know. Outro might be a good idea after we walk off stage. Maybe we'll use it that way.
Yeah. Anyway, I also noticed the classical melodies in there, and I know that you do that in your solo work as well. But I was wondering, do you listen a lot to classical music, personally?
I do all the time, as a matter of fact, more than anything else, really. I don't really ever listen much to rock or metal and all that when I'm home and my free time. I'm not a person who has music on all the time or in my ears. Some other guys in the band, they have constantly. You see them on the planes, in the bus, always with their things and bopping their head and listening to God knows what. But that's not me. I like a little peace and quiet once in a while, or a lot.
Now that we already talked a little bit about playing the songs of the album live, which songs are you mostly looking forward to play live of this album? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably end up playing and checking out most of them during rehearsals at some point. But I could definitely see that the first 2 songs, Zombie Apocalypse and Too Mean to Die, those are good contenders for sure. And Overnight Sensation, definitely. I think it's going to be in the set list for sure. But also The Undertaker, of course. And then there's also the ballad that a lot of people really like, The Best Is Yet to Come. But it's always something that needs to be tried out, and you need to hear that in together with the older songs, and then really play a set and see how it feels. Because you can't really decide that isolated like that. I mean, good songs are might be jumping out, but in the context of a whole evening, it feels different sometimes.
Yeah. You also did a music video for The Undertaker. What can you
Mm-hmm.
tell people about the shooting day?
Yeah, that happened during Corona lockdown times. So first of all, we couldn't come to the main shoot because that happened in Poland. We had a Polish film company who did the main part of the Undertaker guy there in the castle and whatnot. And then the rest of the band, we were in Nashville, and Uwe was in Germany. So the best we could do is we could shoot the 5 of us in Nashville, and we went to an old cemetery there in Nashville, a Civil War, like pretty old cemetery, and shot some sequences there that were blended with the sequences that were in Poland. But there was no way to get Uwe into any of those because nobody could travel. So he's missing. Sorry, Uwe.
Yeah, I guess it's quite complex to to shoot music videos and all that during these days.
Absolutely.
Because of the resources and all. Anyhow, how do you see 2021? Like, do you have any plans if shows are not happening? Are you going to work maybe on your solo stuff more, or?
Already started doing a little bit of that. Yeah. Yep. Because I mean, I want to use the time somehow, of course. And who knows if touring resumes and when it resumes, then it's usually really hard to work on these sort of things because they take months sometimes. But now is definitely the time to, work on some of this stuff and maybe at some point also new accept songs for the future. I've never really done that because I don't know. I always wait until the last minute until we really need an album and then I start writing. But now that we've got maybe more time on our hands than we need or want it, then we should definitely write more stuff. Always
Yeah.
need it, at some point. It's nice to have something in the drawer that you can just pull out and say, hey, I've got this song.
Yeah, that's true. Anyhow, yeah, usually I would ask about your touring plans and such, but I cannot do that now. So our time is almost up anyway. Do you have any last thoughts you want to share with people watching this?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully everybody will enjoy the new album, Too Mean to Die, until we actually get to see each other on tour again. And hopefully that time is sooner than later, because my God, it's been too long now. But, hoping for the best. The best is yet to come.